I'm Damien, 67 years old, still trying to wrap my head around what happened. After 4 decades of putting my son first, Eric took my entire retirement savings of $387,000 for his business. When my heart condition worsened and I needed money for medication, I went to his mansion hoping for help. Instead, he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Your health isn't my problem." I left broken that day, but made one quiet change that cost him everything. If you're watching this, let me know where you're from and hit subscribe for more real-life stories. Looking back at how we got here still feels like examining someone else's life. I spent 42 years as an engineering manager at Pacific Northwest Manufacturing in Portland, Oregon. We made industrial equipment parts, nothing glamorous, but it provided a stable life for my family. I met Laura during my second year of college at a community fundraiser for the local library. She was volunteering, organizing book donations, and I was immediately struck by her warm smile and genuine kindness toward everyone she encountered. We dated for 2 years before getting married in a modest ceremony at her parents' backyard. With our combined savings, we managed to put a down payment on a small 2-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood. Our son Eric came along 3 years later. The first time I held him, this tiny person with my eyes and Laura's nose, I knew I'd do anything to give him a good life. Katie followed 3 years after that, completing our family. Those early years were the happiest of my life. Despite the financial struggles of raising 2 kids on one engineering salary while Laura stayed home with them, we couldn't afford fancy vacations, but our camping trips to Mount Hood became cherished family traditions. Eric was always mechanically inclined, taking apart his toys just to see how they worked. By age 10, he could fix the toaster when it broke. I'd never seen such natural talent. At his Little League games, I never missed a single one. Even when it meant driving straight from work and arriving still in my work clothes, the pride on his face when I cheered from the bleachers made every sacrifice worthwhile. Everything changed when Laura was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. Eric was 15 and Katie just 12. The doctors recommended immediate treatment, and for 2 years, our lives revolved around hospital visits, medication schedules, and trying to maintain some normalcy for the kids. Laura fought with extraordinary courage, never complaining even on her worst days. We thought she was getting better when the cancer returned, spreading to her lungs and brain. The night Laura passed away, I felt as though half of myself had disappeared. The kids were devastated, but I had to be strong for them. Grief counseling helped, but nothing truly fills the void left by losing your partner of 24 years. I had to learn to be both parents while processing my own grief. There were nights I'd wait until the kids were asleep before breaking down in our bedroom, talking to Laura's photo, asking how to go on without her. Financially, things became tight. Laura's medical bills, even with insurance, had depleted our savings. I took a second job on weekends, working at a hardware store, to ensure Eric could attend the engineering program he'd been accepted to at California Polytechnic. It was prestigious and expensive, but his talents deserved that opportunity. I'd skip lunch at work, save on heating by wearing extra layers at home, anything to make sure his tuition payments never faltered. When Eric graduated with honors, I felt like my sacrifices had been worth it. He was the first in our family to earn a college degree. I spent $3,000 I couldn't really spare to fly down for his graduation ceremony, staying in the cheapest motel I could find. The sight of him in that cap and gown made my heart swell with such pride I thought it might burst. After graduation, Eric approached me with a business plan for starting his own engineering consulting firm. He needed startup capital of $45,000. It meant delaying my retirement by 2 years, but I believed in him completely. I remortgaged the house to provide the funding, seeing it as an investment in his future. Katie chose a different path, inspired by the nurses who had cared for her mother. She worked her way through community college and nursing school, taking out student loans that I couldn't help with after supporting Eric's education. When she got a job at Children's Hospital in Denver, Colorado, I was equally proud of her compassion and dedication, though it meant she moved 800 miles away. I finally retired at 65, with carefully planned savings of $387,000 and a modest pension of $2,300 monthly. It wasn't luxurious, but it would allow me to live comfortably in my paid-off home and perhaps visit Katie a few times each year. After decades of putting my children first, I finally felt secure about my own future. Eric's engineering consultancy thrived beyond anything we could have imagined. Within 5 years, he had expanded from a one-man operation to offices in 3 states with 27 employees. His specialty in sustainable energy systems caught the wave of green technology investment. I watched with fatherly pride as his name began appearing in industry publications and local business awards. During this rapid growth period, Eric met Natalie at a charity gala, where his firm was being honored for innovation. She worked in luxury real estate, catering to the newly wealthy tech entrepreneurs populating the West Coast. Tall, immaculately styled, and socially connected, she represented a world far removed from our middle-class roots. Their wedding was at a vineyard estate with 300 guests, most of whom I'd never met. Eric asked if I could contribute $20,000 toward the event, nearly wiping out what little non-retirement savings I had left. I agreed without hesitation, wanting his special day to be perfect. During the reception, I felt oddly out of place among the business executives and socialites, despite being the father of the groom. 6 months after the wedding, Eric and Natalie purchased a 7,000-square-foot home in Westlake Hills, the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. When invited for dinner, I couldn't help but notice the imported marble countertops, custom furniture, and original artwork that must have cost more than my entire home. Natalie spoke enthusiastically about their interior designer and plans for a backyard pool installation. My first heart attack scare happened right after that dinner visit. The chest pain struck while driving home, forcing me to pull over. A passing motorist called an ambulance, and I spent 3 nights in the hospital undergoing tests. The doctors found early signs of coronary artery disease, likely genetic given my moderate lifestyle and healthy weight. I called Eric from the hospital, but he didn't visit until the morning I was discharged. He seemed uncomfortable in the medical setting, constantly checking his phone and standing near the door as if planning a quick escape. When the nurse explained my new medication regimen, he looked distracted, asking how soon I could return to watching his house while they took their planned Bahamas vacation. Our weekly Sunday dinners gradually became monthly, then quarterly, as Eric cited business demands and travel schedules. He missed Thanksgiving that year, calling from a ski lodge in Aspen where he and Natalie had joined friends last minute. Christmas was a brief 2-hour appearance with expensive gifts, but little genuine conversation before they left for another engagement. During one of my visits to their home, Natalie made several comments about my quaint house and sensible car, suggesting I consider selling and upgrading now that Eric was successful. "You shouldn't live like you're still struggling," she said, not understanding that my modest ranch home held 40 years of memories with Laura. Eric began mentioning his new social circle, business associates who owned yachts and vacation properties. His language changed, incorporating terms like high-net-worth individuals and wealth management strategies. When discussing an upcoming company party, he hesitated before inviting me, eventually suggesting I might feel out of place among his colleagues. My retirement party was a small gathering of longtime co-workers at a local restaurant. Eric arrived 45 minutes late and left before the cake was served, explaining that he had an important investor call that couldn't wait. Several colleagues asked about him afterward, surprised by his brief appearance at such a significant event in my life. A month into retirement, Eric called asking detailed questions about my will and whether I'd considered estate planning strategies. The conversation left me uneasy, especially when he seemed more interested in potential inheritance than my adjustment to retirement life. When I mentioned planning a trip to visit Katie in Colorado, he suggested saving the money instead, considering your fixed income situation. Katie called weekly from Denver, genuinely interested in my daily life and health. During these calls, she occasionally expressed concern about Eric's changing personality and priorities. "He never asks about you when we talk," she said during one conversation. "It's always about his latest acquisition or business deal." I defended him, attributing the behavior to the pressures of running a growing company and adjusting to married life. "Success changes people's schedules, not their hearts," I told her, believing it myself. "He's just busy building his future." 6 months into my retirement, Eric made an unexpected Sunday visit alone. After minimal small talk, he explained that an extraordinary business opportunity had arisen requiring immediate capital. He needed a bridge loan of $50,000 until certain contracts were finalized, promising repayment within 3 months with generous interest. The request would require taking a penalty for early withdrawal from one of my pension funds. Despite the financial hit, I agreed without hesitation. My son needed help, and I had always prioritized his success above my own comfort. I signed the withdrawal paperwork the next day, handing him a cashier's check and waving away his written repayment agreement. "Family doesn't need contracts," I said, patting his shoulder. 3 months passed, then 6, with no mention of repayment. When I gently inquired, Eric described unexpected business complications and assured me it would be resolved soon. I chose to trust him, ignoring the small voice of concern growing in the back of my mind. The first serious warning sign about my health came during a routine follow-up with my cardiologist. Additional tests revealed a rare form of cardiomyopathy compounding my coronary artery disease. The condition was causing my heart to weaken progressively, with symptoms that would worsen over time without intervention. Dr. Patterson, a cardiac specialist I was referred to, explained my treatment options with charts and diagrams spread across his desk. Standard treatments showed limited effectiveness for my specific condition, but a new specialized therapy was showing promising results in clinical trials. The drawback was significant. My insurance classified it as experimental and denied coverage. "Based on your test results, Mr. Harrison, I believe this treatment gives you the best chance at maintaining your quality of life," Dr. Patterson said, sliding a detailed cost breakdown across the desk. The numbers were staggering. Initial treatment would cost $78,000, with ongoing medication and monitoring adding approximately $45,000 annually for at least 3 to 4 years. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for nearly an hour, calculating and recalculating my finances. Between my pension, Social Security, and retirement savings, I could afford the treatment, but it would significantly deplete my financial security. Without it, however, my prognosis was concerning. Increasingly limited mobility, potential heart failure, and significantly reduced life expectancy. The day after receiving this diagnosis, Eric called unexpectedly. He hadn't reached out unprompted in months, so the timing seemed strange. "Just checking in on you, Dad," he said, his voice unusually cheerful. When I mentioned my medical situation in broad terms, his interest sharpened noticeably. The call ended with an invitation to his home to discuss some financial solutions that might help with my medical expenses. Eric's home office featured floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking manicured grounds with a water feature. He had prepared a professional presentation on his large monitor, complete with graphs and projections about his company's growth trajectory. The expansion plans were impressive: new offices in 2 additional states, partnerships with major energy companies, and projected revenue tripling within 18 months. "Here's what I'm thinking, Dad," he said, swiveling in his leather chair. "Instead of letting your retirement savings sit in those conservative accounts earning barely 2%, invest it with my company. I'm guaranteeing 15% returns minimum. That's over $57,000 annually on your $387,000 investment. More than enough to cover your medical needs and still grow your principal." The proposal seemed too good to be true, which should have been my first warning. But this was my son, not some stranger pitching an investment scheme. He showed me contracts with major clients, architectural plans for new facilities, and a growing staff directory of impressively credentialed engineers. That night, I barely slept, weighing the decision. The next morning, I visited my bank's financial advisor, bringing Eric's proposal materials. She frowned while reviewing the documents, looking up at me over her reading glasses. "Mr. Harrison, I strongly advise against putting all your retirement savings into a single investment, regardless of projected returns. Diversification is essential for security, especially at your stage of life with new medical considerations." Her advice was sound, professional, and completely rational. Yet when faced with choosing between a stranger's financial wisdom and my own son's assurances, family loyalty won. I had changed Eric's diapers, taught him to ride a bike, helped him through grief when we lost his mother. Our bond, I believed, transcended business considerations. The following Tuesday, I went to my bank and withdrew the full amount of my retirement savings, $387,000. The bank manager asked twice if I was certain, mentioning potential tax implications and loss of secure growth. I signed the necessary waivers, collected the cashier's check, and drove directly to Eric's office. The moment I handed him, the check remains vivid in my memory. His eyes lit up, though he quickly composed his expression into one of solemn responsibility. "You won't regret this, Dad. I'll take care of everything." We shook hands formally. Then he gave me a quick embrace before being called into another meeting. His assistant showed me out, the entire transaction taking less than 15 minutes. For the first 2 months, things proceeded as promised. Monthly payments of $4,837 appeared in my checking account, representing the promised 15% return. I began preliminary consultations for my cardiac treatment, relieved that I could proceed without completely depleting my resources. Then the payments became erratic. The third month's deposit was a week late. The fourth arrived 10 days late and short by $600, with a text message from Eric explaining a temporary accounting adjustment. By the 6th month, the payment was 2 weeks late and reduced to $3,000 with a vague email about reinvesting portions for higher future yields. Reaching Eric became increasingly difficult. Calls went to voicemail. Texts received delayed, brief responses. Visits to his office found him perpetually in meetings or just having left for the day. His assistant, Jenny, always looked uncomfortable delivering these messages, avoiding eye contact as she promised he would call back soon. Meanwhile, my health continued deteriorating without the specialized treatment. Climbing my porch steps left me winded. Simple yard work became impossible. The medication I could afford provided minimal relief as my condition progressed exactly as Dr. Patterson had warned. Katie's surprise visit came after 3 unanswered weekly calls. She used her key to enter when I didn't respond to her knocking, finding me asleep at 2 in the afternoon, exhausted from trying to change a light bulb in the kitchen. Her nursing training immediately recognized the signs of my worsening condition. That evening, sitting at my kitchen table with my medical files and bank statements spread before us, I finally admitted the full situation. The investment with Eric, the diminishing returns, my inability to access the specialized treatment, and my fear of confronting my own son about the money. Katie's reaction progressed from shock to sadness to fury. She immediately called Eric from my phone, putting it on speaker. When it went to voicemail, she left a message that burned with controlled anger. "This is your sister. I'm at Dad's house. We need to talk about his investment and medical treatment. Immediately. Call back tonight." No call came that night, nor the next day. Katie extended her visit, using vacation days from work. She offered to lend me $15,000 from her own modest savings, despite her husband's recent layoff and their mortgage on a small Denver home. The offer brought tears to my eyes, not just for her generosity, but for the stark contrast it presented to her brother's behavior. "I can't take your money, sweetheart," I told her. "You're starting your own family. This is between Eric and me." But as I said it, I finally acknowledged to myself that something was deeply wrong with the situation and my relationship with my son. After 6 weeks, without any payments or meaningful communication, I made the decision to drive to Eric's home unannounced. My old sedan looked out of place among the luxury vehicles in the circular driveway. A uniformed security guard approached as I parked, asking for identification and my purpose. When I explained I was Eric Harrison's father, his demeanor softened slightly, though he still called the house before allowing me through. The foyer of Eric's home had been redecorated since my last visit 3 months earlier. New abstract sculptures stood on pedestals, and what appeared to be an original Rothko painting hung on the main wall. I recalled Eric once mentioning that Rothko pieces typically sold for millions. As I waited in the living room, I noticed other new additions. A baby grand piano, though neither Eric nor Natalie played, and a collection of crystal decanters on a new marble bar cart. From Eric's home office down the hall, I could hear raised voices. The door was ajar enough to catch fragments of an argument between him and Natalie. I told you he'd show up eventually, Natalie's voice, tense and irritated. Just need more time. Market fluctuations. Temporary situation. Eric responded. Your father's getting suspicious. You can't keep avoiding. I'll handle it. Done with this conversation. When Eric finally emerged, his welcoming smile didn't reach his eyes. He guided me into his office, a space larger than my entire living room, furnished with custom bookshelves and a desk that looked like it cost more than my car. The wall behind his desk displayed his business awards and photos with prominent politicians and industry leaders. Dad, this is a surprise. You should have called first. I've been meaning to reach out, but things have been incredibly hectic. He gestured toward the visitor chair while taking his seat in the high-backed leather executive chair. I explained my concerns directly, mentioning the stopped payments, my worsening health, and the urgent need to begin treatment. As I spoke, Eric's expression shifted from forced patience to barely concealed irritation. The economy is volatile right now. We're experiencing some temporary cash flow issues that have affected our investor distributions, he said, sounding like he was reading from a script prepared for anxious shareholders. These fluctuations are normal in business. Your principal investment remains secure. As he spoke, I noticed a brochure partially visible under some papers on his desk. From my angle, I could make out the words exclusive beachfront property in Palm Beach. When I shifted to see better, Eric quickly rearranged the papers, covering it completely. Eric, I need $60,000 by next week to begin my treatment. Not the returns, but part of my actual investment. I leaned forward, trying to establish the gravity of the situation. The doctors say I can't delay any longer without risking permanent damage. His face hardened, an expression I'd never seen from my son. That's not possible. Your investment is allocated to specific development projects with contractual obligations. Early withdrawal would trigger severe penalties and jeopardize multiple business relationships. Son, this is your father's life we're talking about, not a business transaction. My voice cracked slightly. I gave you everything I had based on your promise. What happened next still haunts me. Eric stood, straightening his custom suit jacket, and looked down at me with cold detachment. Business investments carry risks. That was disclosed in the documents you signed. Your health issues aren't my company's problem, Dad. I've got investors and employees depending on me making sound financial decisions, not emotional ones. The shock of his words physically hurt, a pain more acute than my heart condition. Before I could respond, Natalie appeared at the office door, designer sunglasses perched on her head, car keys in hand. We're going to be late for the club luncheon, she said, then noticed me. Oh, hello, Damien. She glanced between us, sensing the tension. Is everything okay? Dad's just having trouble understanding business realities, Eric replied. He wants to withdraw his investment because of some medical expenses. Natalie's perfectly sculpted eyebrows raised slightly. But surely you have Medicare or something. People always expect family handouts when they see success, don't they? The room seemed to spin around me. Standing abruptly, I stumbled against the desk, knocking over a framed photo of Eric and Natalie beside their new boat. As I bent to pick it up, a folder fell open, revealing documents for a new Ferrari purchase in Eric's name, the price clearly visible, $180,000. The realization that my son had used my retirement to fund his luxurious lifestyle, rather than legitimate business needs, triggered something in my chest. A sharp pain radiated down my left arm, and I found myself gripping the edge of the desk, struggling to breathe. Eric didn't call an ambulance. Instead, he buzzed his assistant. Jenny, Dad's not feeling well. Could you drive him home? I have that lunch meeting I can't miss. Jenny, a kind woman in her 30s, helped me to her modest car, apologizing repeatedly, though it wasn't her responsibility. During the 20-minute drive to my home, she kept glancing at me with concern. Mr. Harrison, I'm so sorry, she said finally, helping me from the car. I've been working there 2 years, and the way things have been handled lately isn't right, especially with family. She handed me her personal number, whispering, "Call me if you need anything." I mean it. That night, alone in the home where I'd raised my children, I sat in Laura's old rocking chair until dawn. I spoke aloud to her as if she were beside me, asking how our bright, compassionate boy had transformed into someone unrecognizable. For the first time, I truly accepted that my money was gone, spent on luxury cars and vacation properties while my health deteriorated beyond repair. Around 3 a.m, the chest pains became unbearable. I drove myself to the emergency room, nearly blacking out twice during the 15-minute journey. The ER doctor's expression told me everything before he even spoke. My condition had deteriorated significantly. "Mr. Harrison, delaying treatment has caused damage that may be irreversible," Dr. Winters explained while reviewing my test results. "Your heart function has decreased by 30% since your last assessment. We need to admit you immediately and develop an intervention plan." In the cardiac ward, I was placed in a semi-private room with another patient, an older gentleman named Harold, who was recovering from bypass surgery. During my second day there, Harold noticed my distress wasn't purely physical. "Son, I've been watching you stare at that wall for hours, and it ain't the hospital decor that's bothering you," he said, his voice gravelly from decades of smoking before his heart issues. Sometimes talking to a stranger is easier than family. Something about his straightforward manner broke through my reserve. I found myself sharing the entire situation about Eric, the money, and my current medical predicament. Harold listened without interruption, then shared that he'd gone through something similar with a business partner decades earlier. Betrayal's a special kind of pain, especially from someone you love. But there's always a way forward, even when you can't see it yet. Before being discharged the following day, Harold introduced me to his nephew who worked with the Patient Advocacy Alliance, a nonprofit helping patients navigate financial and insurance challenges. He also suggested I contact an old friend of his, a retired attorney named Richard, who specialized in financial matters before retirement. Richard agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near my home the following week. At 73, he had fully white hair and walked with a slight limp, but his mind remained razor-sharp. After hearing my story, he removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Damien, what you're describing isn't just a family disagreement. It's potentially elder financial abuse, which is both a civil and criminal matter in this state. The fact that he solicited this investment, knowing you needed the money for medical treatment, makes it particularly problematic." The term elder abuse shocked me. I was still thinking of this as a misunderstanding between father and son, not a legal issue with potential criminal implications. Richard explained that Eric's actions fit a pattern he'd seen numerous times during his practice, targeting vulnerable older relatives, making unrealistic promises, then avoiding accountability. "I've been hearing rumors through mutual friends that Eric's been telling people you're becoming confused about money matters," Richard added gently. "Classic move to discredit you if you start asking questions." That night, Katie called with alarming news. After my hospital stay, she'd done some investigating through mutual acquaintances. Eric had taken 3 expensive vacations in the past 4 months. His company had purchased a private jet share. Meanwhile, 2 smaller investors had filed complaints about missing returns. "Dad, I'm flying in tomorrow," Katie said, her voice allowing no argument. "I've taken a 2-week leave of absence. We're going to fix this." Katie arrived carrying a folder of research she'd compiled, including printouts of social media posts showing Eric and Natalie's extravagant lifestyle, while my investment returns had dwindled. More importantly, she'd located my original investment documents, which clearly stated the guaranteed returns and payment schedule. Richard introduced us to Sarah Williams, an attorney specializing in elder law, who agreed to review my case. In her downtown office, surrounded by impressive credentials and legal texts, she didn't minimize the challenges ahead. "Financial recovery in these cases is complex," she explained, "but you have several factors working in your favor: clear documentation of the investment terms, evidence of lifestyle expenditures, contradicting claims of business use, and the medical necessity component." While legal options were being explored, I applied for an emergency medical assistance program through the Patient Advocacy Alliance. The paperwork was overwhelming, but Katie's nursing background proved invaluable in navigating the medical terminology and documentation requirements. During this process, we discovered something unexpected. An old 401 Kelvins account from my first engineering job that had been automatically rolled over decades ago and forgotten. The balance was modest, $42,000, but it represented a lifeline we hadn't known existed. Over the next week, a comprehensive plan took shape. 1. Document everything related to the financial transaction and subsequent communications. 2. Change my will and estate planning documents immediately. 3. File a formal elder abuse report with Adult Protective Services. 4. Secure my remaining assets and newly discovered 401 Kelvins. 5. Pursue medical treatment with the available resources, even if limited. Katie postponed her return to Denver, calling her husband Michael to explain the situation. He immediately offered to bring their children and stay in a hotel nearby to support us, an act of family solidarity that brought tears to my eyes. Eric attempted to contact Katie several times, leaving messages about Dad's confusion and protecting family interests. She refused to engage without legal representation present, saving each message as potential evidence. Friends from my church and former workplace rallied around me once they learned of the situation. My neighbor Thomas drove me to medical appointments. My church's meal ministry delivered dinners 3 times weekly. Laura's oldest friend Martha helped organize my medical records and insurance paperwork. For the first time since discovering Eric's betrayal, I slept through the night without waking to anxiety or chest pains. Taking action, however difficult, provided a sense of control I'd lost. While the road ahead remained uncertain, I was no longer facing it alone or in the shadows. The first concrete step in our plan was meeting with estate attorney James Donovan to completely revise my will. In his wood-paneled office with law books lining the walls, I signed documents removing Eric as both beneficiary and medical decision-maker, roles now transferred to Katie. I recommend including an explicit statement regarding the disinheritance, James advised, to prevent any future claims of oversight or confusion. He drafted a detailed addendum explaining that the decision was made with full mental capacity and specific reasoning, not out of momentary anger. My remaining assets and newly discovered 401 Kelvins were placed in a protected trust with provisions specifically for medical care and basic living expenses. A separate document outlined a small bequest to a heart research foundation in Laura's memory. James also helped me draft a personal letter to Eric explaining my decision to be delivered after my passing. The process was emotionally exhausting but clarifying, allowing me to express my disappointment while still acknowledging the love I would always have for my son despite his actions. With the estate matters settled, we proceeded with the formal complaint process. Sarah Williams helped file detailed documentation with both Adult Protective Services and the District Attorney's Financial Crimes Unit. The complaint included bank records, investment documents, medical necessity documentation, and evidence of Eric's company expenditures during the period he claimed cash flow problems. The filing process itself was straightforward, but the emotional toll was significant. Officially accusing my son of financial exploitation went against every parental instinct. Katie sat beside me during each signature, sometimes holding my hand when emotions threatened to overwhelm me. News of the complaint quickly reached Eric through industry connections. His response was immediate and panicked. My phone flooded with voicemails and texts, their tone evolving from disbelief to anger to desperate negotiation. "Dad, what are you doing? This is completely unnecessary. You've been manipulated by Katie and those lawyers. Think about what this will do to my reputation and business. We can work something out privately. No need for authorities." I didn't respond directly, following Sarah's advice to maintain communication through legal channels only. The silence clearly unnerved Eric, accustomed as he was to controlling conversations. An unexpected ally emerged in Jenny, Eric's assistant, who contacted Sarah's office offering to provide documentation. She had maintained copies of internal financial records, showing that my investment had been directly transferred to personal accounts rather than business operations. Her testimony would prove crucial in establishing the deliberate nature of the misappropriation. 3 weeks after filing the complaint, we arranged a mediation meeting at Richard's former law office. Eric arrived with his attorney, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit who specialized in defending white-collar financial cases. I brought Katie, Richard, and Sarah Williams. The contrast between the two sides of the table was striking. Eric and his attorney projected aggressive confidence at first, suggesting my complaint stemmed from confusion and family manipulation. Sarah calmly presented our evidence piece by piece: the original investment agreement, records of diverted funds, documentation of Eric's luxury purchases, and my detailed medical records showing the consequences of delayed treatment. The dynamic shifted visibly when Sarah introduced Jenny's affidavit and supporting documentation. Eric's attorney requested a break, during which loud arguments could be heard from the conference room where they retreated. When they returned, Eric's demeanor had changed completely, the bravado replaced by nervous calculation. I recognized there may have been some misunderstandings about the investment structure, his attorney offered carefully. My client is prepared to repay $100,000 immediately as a good faith resolution, with a payment plan for an additional $50,000 over 2 years. Sarah didn't even need to consult with me before responding. That's significantly less than half of the original investment, with no consideration for damages, medical consequences, or the guaranteed returns that were promised. We'll proceed with both civil action and the criminal complaint. Eric's face flushed with anger and fear. Dad, be reasonable. I don't have $387,000 liquid right now. Taking this further will just destroy the business and leave nothing for anyone. For the first time since entering the room, I spoke directly to my son. This stopped being about money the moment you told me my health wasn't your problem, Eric. This is about accountability. Word of the legal proceedings spread quickly through Eric's business community. 2 days after our meeting, the local business journal published a small item about allegations of financial impropriety against Harrison Engineering Consultants. Eric's 3 main business partners requested an emergency meeting and internal financial audit. A former client of Eric's contacted our attorney after seeing the news item, describing a similar situation involving promised returns that never materialized. 2 more came forward the following week, suggesting a pattern rather than an isolated incident involving his father. As pressure mounted from multiple directions, Eric's carefully constructed world began unraveling. Natalie, unwilling to weather a potential scandal and financial downturn, moved out of their mansion, taking substantial personal property. The luxury car disappeared from their driveway. His business partners initiated proceedings to remove him from leadership of his own company pending resolution of the financial allegations. 1 month after our mediation meeting, Eric requested another conversation, this time without attorneys present. Katie insisted on accompanying me to a meeting at a neutral coffee shop location. Eric arrived, looking disheveled, the confident businessman replaced by someone I barely recognized. "The partners are forcing me out," he admitted, staring into his untouched coffee. "Natalie's filed for divorce. The house is being listed next week." He looked up, his eyes showing genuine fear for the first time. "If the criminal charges proceed, I could face jail time. Is that what you want, Dad?" Katie maintained a protective posture beside me, ready to end the meeting at the first sign of manipulation. But I needed to have this conversation, to look my son in the eyes and understand if any recognition of wrongdoing existed beyond fear of consequences. What I wanted was for my son to honor his word and show basic compassion when I needed medical care. I replied evenly. What I wanted was to not have to choose between treatment and basic living expenses after giving you everything I had. Eric had no meaningful response. The conversation ended with no resolution, only an agreement to continue legal proceedings with the possibility of settlement if full restitution became possible. As we left, I felt an odd mixture of sadness and liberation. The father in me mourned the relationship we had lost, while the man in me stood firmer in my right to be treated with basic dignity. 2 days later, our attorney called with news. Facing pressure from multiple fronts, Eric had agreed to a structured settlement including full financial restitution, legal costs, and compensatory damages for delayed medical treatment. The company would be sold to the remaining partners, with proceeds directed to settling his obligations. The criminal investigation would proceed separately, though our civil settlement might influence those outcomes. For the first time in months, I felt a weight lifting. Not just the financial concern, but the burden of betrayal I'd been carrying. Though the relationship with my son lay in ruins, I had stood up for myself in a way I never imagined would be necessary. 1 year after that first devastating conversation in Eric's office, I sit in the garden of my new home, smaller but more manageable than my previous house. The sale of my old property combined with the settlement funds allowed me to purchase this single-story ranch in a quiet community designed for seniors, with no stairs to navigate as my health fluctuates. The specialized treatment, begun 8 months ago, has stabilized my condition. Dr. Patterson explains that while some heart damage was permanent due to the delayed intervention, my current regimen has prevented further deterioration. I won't run any marathons, but I can tend my small garden, walk the community trails, and live independently with reasonable quality of life. Katie and her family made the difficult but loving decision to relocate to be closer to me. Michael found a position at a local engineering firm that actually improved their financial situation, and my grandchildren now visit every Sunday for dinner. Watching Katie's husband patiently teaching my grandson how to plant tomato seedlings in my garden brings a joy I had feared was permanently lost. The legal proceedings resulted in recovering 70% of my original savings, sufficient to secure my medical care and modest living expenses for the foreseeable future. More importantly, the case led to connections with an elder abuse prevention advocacy group, where I now volunteer twice weekly, sharing my experience to help others recognize warning signs I missed. Harold, my hospital roommate whose advice started my journey to recovery, has become a close friend. At 82, his outlook on life remains vibrantly positive despite his own health challenges. Our weekly chess games usually end with his victory, but the conversations about life, loss, and resilience are the real purpose of our meetings. 6 months after the settlement, Eric made his first unexpected visit to my new home. Standing on my porch, he looked markedly different from the confident businessman I'd last seen. The designer clothes were replaced by casual wear, the luxury watch gone. His expression humbled in a way I never expected to see. The conversation was difficult. Hours of painful honesty about trust destroyed and the uncertain path forward. Eric had lost nearly everything: his company, his marriage, his home, and most of his social circle once the extent of his actions became public. The criminal investigation resulted in probation rather than jail time, contingent on full restitution to all victims. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said as the afternoon light faded in my small living room. "I just want you to know that I understand now what I threw away. And it wasn't just the money or the business. It was something much more valuable." Part of me wanted to immediately embrace him and say all was forgiven, the father in me still reaching toward the son I'd always loved. But the wiser part held back, understanding that authentic healing requires honesty and consequences, not just emotional reconciliation. "Trust is rebuilt through consistent actions over time," I told him. "I'll always be your father, but our relationship needs to be reconstructed from the ground up." In the months since, Eric has begun taking small steps. He's found work at an engineering firm in an entry-level position, living in a modest apartment and meeting regularly with a therapist. He volunteers weekly at a senior center, perhaps his most meaningful effort toward making amends. Our relationship remains cautious, but no longer non-existent, with brief visits every few weeks and occasional shared meals. Katie maintains a protective distance, her forgiveness coming more slowly than mine. As a nurse, the medical consequences of his actions strike her as particularly unforgivable. Yet even she has acknowledged his efforts at change, allowing him limited, supervised time with her children during family gatherings. On difficult days, I find myself sitting in the garden talking to Laura, imagining what she would advise about forgiveness and family healing. I believe she would counsel patience tempered with appropriate boundaries, loving without enabling, hoping for change while accepting reality. This journey has taught me that sometimes the most loving act isn't endless giving or unlimited tolerance, but rather standing firmly for your own worth and dignity. Allowing someone to experience the natural consequences of their actions isn't vengeance. It's an opportunity for genuine growth that endless bailouts would prevent. My definition of wealth has transformed completely. True richness comes from relationships built on mutual respect and care, from community connections that sustain us through difficulties, and from the internal peace that comes from living with integrity even when doing so is painful. For those of you watching who might be facing your own family betrayals or difficult choices with aging parents or adult children, remember that love doesn't require becoming a doormat. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's often the most loving choice for everyone involved. Most importantly, you're never too old to stand up for yourself and your needs. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced family financial conflicts or had to make difficult decisions about trust and forgiveness? What helped you navigate those challenging waters? Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your self-respect and peace of mind. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that healing is always possible, even after the deepest betrayals.